Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. We talk a lot about horror on this channel, but the real horror out there is how easy it is for your data to fall in the hands of disreputable people. That's why today's video is sponsored by Aura. While you're enjoying today's spooky video, data brokers, those things that go bump on the web, could already be selling your information to scanners, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, your health records, your relatives, they could all be out there. That's why I've been using Aura. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests, just for me. It was simple to use and very intuitive, and I had barely gotten out of the setup process, and it was already blocking over 20 data broker requests on my behalf. Aura protects your passwords, your banking information, everything you need for day-to-day online life. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it also protects me from hackers who could use my information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, other sensitive information. Things like a certain YouTube channel that you all enjoy listening to so much. Aura also does much more to protect me and my family from online threats, the kind you can't see. It comes with other features like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more, without having to download several different apps. It really is just that easy to set up, and best of all, I get everything at one affordable price. I hear you saying, but Dr. Plague, I have one or two of these tools already. But, dear readers, not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Readers of my fine tales can tell you why that never ends well. Aura is always on, doing the hard work of keeping me safe so I can focus on other tasks like finishing my latest book or uploading my most recent video. I value my privacy, and I know you value yours. You can go to Aura.com, that's AURA.com, to start your 2-week free trial. You can also check out the link below and start your free trial with Aura. So why not give Aura a try and protect yourself from the real monsters out there? I had to hand it to Hal, I thought, as our motley crew settled into our table at Hal's low-cost fine dining and exotic foods. He really had managed to corner an extremely niche market. It made me think of that old story of Michael Jackson renting out an entire grocery store and populating it with his own people so that he could experience what it was like to be a normal person going grocery shopping. If you were a Lovecraftian horror from an alternative dimension with a taste for human souls, I would imagine going out for dinner and drinks at a restaurant with your friends was an experience you were rarely able to enjoy. I had been in the restaurant a few times since the beginning of my employment, but it was mostly just in and out for restocking purposes. One time it was to help chase down a zombie who was trying to do a little dine and dash. Well, dine and shuffle, badoom-tsh. But this was my first time actually dining here. If one were to disregard the clientele, they could almost believe there was nothing overly special about this particular eatery. That was, until they sat down and began to actually examine their surroundings. The decorative artwork existed in the same banal subgenre found in an average chain Italian restaurant. Bland and forgettable scenes of idyllic European wineries. Except the woodpile at the side of the living quarters was composed of bones, and there seemed to be a decapitated body lying next to the stump, decorated with an axe, standing at a 45-degree angle. Portraits of a happy family in a sunny kitchen, usually chopping the fingers off a dismembered arm. One painting, towards the entrance to the kitchen, was of a scared-looking man who seemed to be frozen midway through pounding on the canvas in an attempt to break his way out. There were only about 30 tables in the restaurant, but they were spread far apart to accommodate diners of all sizes. Of those 30 tables, only 6 of them were occupied. 3 by seemingly normal humans, if not for the noticeable blood splatter around their plates, a large gelatinous blob relaxing contentedly on another corner, with a full-sized human slowly digesting inside of him. Another held a minotaur and a gorgon who gazed at each other with hunger, though whether it was for sex or dinner was impossible to tell. At the final table sat Satan in all his red-skinned, spiral-horned, cloven-foot glory. He seemed to be completely engrossed in his copy of Atlas Shrugged. My eyes lingered on Satan for a bit, wondering if the traditional neutrality of the restaurant had been taken a little too far. As a result, I jumped a little in my seat when the waiter spoke behind me. "Sir, would you like to sample the house wine?" I turned around and locked eyes with a pair of dead ones that stared back at me. The vampire looked young, maybe 18 or 19. His hair had that way too greasy look that all vamps seem to have. His gaunt skin looked almost as if it had been stretched over his skull, and his canines bulged out grotesquely from his mouth. His gaze seemed to drip hate, probably at the world in general, but it certainly felt like it was directed at me personally. I will never in a million years understand why people thought vampires were sexy. "Sure, Sparkles, pour one out," I responded. The vampire grimaced and proceeded to pour a taste of deep red wine for me. "Aged 50 years, notes of oak, lavender, and brunette." I blinked at the last one, feeling a sharp tingle down my spine, knowing that it meant what I thought it meant. This would be a line I hadn't crossed yet. Butch watched me from the corner of the table, his eyebrows cocked as if curious of what I would do. I met his eyes and downed the glass. Still a trainee, my ass. I'm not sure exactly what this fact says about me, but I found the wine to be excellent. It's delicious, but I probably couldn't afford the bottle. Not when Butch is paying me half what he's paying the temp. Just a virgin daiquiri for me. The bloodsucker nodded and moved around the table, taking everyone's drink orders. Babs gently nudged me and whispered, "The waiter you just called Sparkles is Gwade, the eldest son of the ruling vampire family in Europe. He's over 600 years old." I looked at her with a slight smile. "Butch just admitted he's stuck on the mortal plane," I whispered back. "How long have you been stuck here?" "About 500 years, I think. Last week, I called him a non-Tesla pigeon fucker. For me, Sparkles is downright polite." Babs gazed at me thoughtfully. "You know, I'm putting the odds on about 50-50 for whether your personality is going to take you far in this lifestyle or get you killed in the next week." I shrugged. If I'm gonna be killed, I want to feel like I deserve it. Hey, if Sparkles is a prince, then what the hell is he doing working here? No idea. He would never talk about it. My guess is he, or his dad, owes Hal a favor. That's how most people end up working here. Not me, I said. I volunteered. Yeah, but you're pretty fucked in general, right? Fair point. Butch glanced up at us. I think you two whispering together might actually be the most terrifying thing in this restaurant. Don't be jealous, Butch, I quipped. You know you'll always be my bae. He rolled his eyes at me and turned back to X-Mac. I hate to admit it, but I think you're the first Cupid I've ever met, too. I'm not surprised, X-Mac said, while helping himself to a piece of bread from the center of the table. You don't really strike me as the one-night stand kind of guy. Babs was occupied with pouring a little water onto a saucer for her three-headed quokka, so she didn't see the glance Butch sent her direction. I guess not. What's that have to do with it, though? Aren't you basically a heavenly matchmaker? X-Mac squinted. More like a divine eugenicist. When it's destiny for two people to bump uglies and push out a kid, they send me in. Well, that's a bit disillusioning, Babs commented. You don't inspire love, then? X-Mac laughed. When you hear stories about Cupid, how does it go? He fires an arrow at a couple of unsuspecting people, they run to each other and immediately start making out and dry humping each other. Does that sound like love to you? Sure, in the old days, once a few periods were missed, there was a pretty good chance they'd get married, and sometimes love would grow from that pairing. But that initial can't keep your hands off each other feeling, that's us, and that's pure lust, sugar tits. Gwade returned with our drinks. I wasn't sure what satanic bar they had poached their mixologist from, but the daiquiri was incredible. I quickly scanned the menu when I realized that Gwade had started taking food orders. Despite my experimentation with the wine, I wasn't ready to go full cannibal yet. Unfortunately, that eliminated most of the menu for me, so I went with the plesiosaur sushi. Babs and Butch started to bicker about his choice of arrhythmian boar, her claiming that he needed to start watching his blood pressure, and him arguing that he was functionally immortal. While I listened to their banter, I began to feel the prickling sensation of eyes studying me. I looked across the restaurant and found myself locking eyes with Satan. He had closed his book and was contemplating me from across the table. After a moment of us staring at each other, he tilted his head towards the door to the kitchen. He then stood up and casually strolled in that direction. At some point, I was really going to have to examine why I felt the compulsion to do the most recklessly irresponsible things. Because when most people see the devil attempt to lure them into the back of a restaurant that serves humans, their response is to run the other way. My response was to mutter something about going to get another daiquiri and walk right into the kitchen after him. I waved hello to the chef, a giant millipede who had handled a dozen different saucepans at once, and to the sous chef, a large hairy man with giant tusks sprouting downward who was garnishing a person's crushed head on a silver plate surrounded by kale and sprouts, and a Middle Eastern man wearing a full tool belt who was sawing through a human arm with a handsaw. I gritted my teeth as I continued past the kitchen and into the pantry area. Although one wall of the large pantry contained all the normal professional kitchen ingredients, the other wall was lined with stacked cages filled with terrified-looking people who immediately started begging me for help. I wasn't so jaded yet that I didn't feel that shock of horror and the feel of guilt as I tried to keep an impassive face. Morality becomes far more complicated once you understand your true place on the food chain. "Shut up!" growled a voice at the back of the pantry, and the cages went quiet. "What the fuck are you doing here, Clear?" "Three things, Satan," I began, holding up 3 fingers. "1, how do you know my name? I know I'm kind of a big deal around here, but I didn't think the news of my exploits had gotten as far as your ears yet. 2, thinking about putting out a petition to rename this place the Monster Mash. What do you think? 3, I know you're the essence of pure evil and all that, but Ayn Rand? Seriously?" Satan laughed. "I completely forgot that from your perspective we haven't met yet, but believe me, we're old friends." "I dunno, feel like I would remember something like that." "How about now?" Satan vanished. Simultaneously, I felt a slight pressure on my left shoulder. I turned my head to see a tiny version of Lucifer standing there. "No, really, Clear, you don't need to feel bad about pushing that kid off the swing. You told him you wanted a turn 10 minutes ago. It's fine, Clear. She's a nice girl. You don't need to wear a condom with her. It's only Walmart, Clear. Everybody shoplifts from Walmart once in a while. Don't worry about it. Clear, everybody already expects you to drink the blood wine." The weight from my shoulder disappeared, and the devil-looking guy popped back into the full size in front of me again. "You're my shoulder demon? That's a bingo." We just say bingo around here. "So you're not the real devil then?" "Nope, just your personal Jiminy Locust." "Hey, can you do one-handed push-ups?" "Can you hold a conversation that's not 80% movie references? Now, I repeat, what the fuck are you doing here?" Waiting for my Nessie sushi. Why? Think I should have gone with the dragon roll instead? My demon stared at me. It's amazing that no part of you needs my encouragement to constantly make shitty jokes. If you're my shoulder demon, then you should already know I only started making bad jokes so that I could stop crapping myself instead. And the next time I catch him alone, I'm gonna slap Butch full in the face for that. Anyway, just wanted to have a quick face-to-face with you. Make sure you actually know what you're doing and you want to do this. Shouldn't there be a shoulder angel having this talk with me? He quit when you were 19. He's running the AA meetings on the third circle now. Jesus, am I really that hard to work with? Yeah, look, I agree, this is out of your bailiwick, but this isn't the kind of descent into bad decisions I'm used to. This rabbit hole goes deep, Claire, deep enough that even I have concerns about where we'll end up. You're close enough to the entrance that you can still climb back up, get back to a normal life. We can get one of your old jobs back, find some hottie to settle down with, get a house with a man cave where we can get stoned and bang the babysitter after the kids go to bed. Trust me, it'll be a fair shake better than where we could end up if you go through that door to Purgatory. I stared at my shoulder demon in horror. Claire, you gotta calm the fuck down. You're drunk. Am not, I shouted as I filled my pockets with the iron powder Butch had used a few hours earlier. I'd been lost in an existential dread throughout the remainder of dinner. We just need to get going right fucking now, and I want to be prepared. I've never been to Purgatory before. I've never even been to Florida. Purgatory's like Florida, right? I feel like I heard that. Butch shrugged. No, not at all. But also, yeah, kinda. It's still not so bad that you need to bring Excalibur. I paused in the process of clumsily strapping the huge sword across my back before letting it clatter back to the ground. Yeah, you're right, we need a low profile. I'll take the Cloak of Cowardice, I said, pulling the black supervillain cloak off a shelf and flourishing it over my shoulder. Seriously, Claire, what the hell has gotten into you? I don't want to work at IHOP again, I yelled, my panic infusing my voice with more volume than I intended. A sharp slap echoed across the store. I looked to the far end of the store to see Babs stalking away from a broadly grinning X-Mac. What? Come on, it was a compliment, he shouted after her. Babs walked up and glared at me. We really had to recruit the first angelic being that walked through the door, didn't we? I know we can do better than a Cupid. Look, I know he's a little Weinstein-y, I sighed, but the fairy was only able to tell us where Hal was at the particular moment we asked the question. He could already be gone for all we know. Babs shook her head. Fine, but one of you two needs to go talk with that guy. If I have to spend the entire trip hearing about his ideas for tattoos I should get across my chest, I'm going to feed him to a rancor. I looked at Butch. Do we have a... It's an idiom, you idiot, Babs snapped at me. Give me a break. It's only been a few weeks since I learned that every other thing was real. Why did we put you in charge of this again? It was my animal magnetism, wasn't it? Kid, get the Cupid off my tits. I grunted. Fine. Butch, go deal with the pervert angel. I'll get us packed, he told me. I nodded and made my way over to X-Mac, who was thumbing through a copy of Hustler. He glanced up at me. Don't worry, I'll behave myself going forward. I just like, starting the bar off low. It's the best way to continually exceed expectations. Believe me, I understand that philosophy better than most. He grinned at me. I can always tell a kindred spirit. Same. I never thought it would be a Cupid, though. I never really thought about what you guys would look like in reality, but I don't think I expected... I gestured to all of him. At Butch's polite request, X-Mac had decided to spare us his traditional sash and overtly chubby nudity. I was still on the fence about whether the neon green velour jumpsuit was actually an improvement or not. If I'm gonna be hanging out in some other people's plane of existence for a while, I'm doing it in style. Is velour all the rage in Purgatory these days? He raised an eyebrow at me. First time? I'm still pretty new to the lifestyle. Should I be worried? X-Mac gave me an appraising look up and down. My hands seemed to recognize his gaze and instinctually moved to cover my crotch. Don't flatter yourself. I like my guys with a little more meat on their bones. I'd maybe consider that cloak before we go. It won't really look out of place, but gets pretty hot during the day. I swept my cloak off, Nosferatuically. I need a plan B in case things go sideways. Also, don't it look awesome in this thing? Vintage vampire might be the new look. You drunk kid. Why does everyone keep asking me that? You were with us at the restaurant. You saw everything I had. You had 4 daiquiris. Virgin daiquiris. There was an extended pause. Those were regular daiquiris with virgin's blood in them, weren't they? Makes much more sense now that I know you're a noob. Nothing fucks you up quite like virgin's blood. I tried to quell the queasiness that washed over me for a moment. I reconsidered the cloak. I had already done far more vampiring that day than was probably healthy for me. If you two are done blowing each other over there, Babs said, hefting a backpack over her shoulder, I don't have enough time for a detour to heaven to replace Katniss Everhard over there, so we definitely don't have time for you to go mining for prostates. Butch looked up from his inspection of Chekhov's gun and grinned at her. Don't take this the wrong way, but I kind of missed how crass you get when you're impatient. He slipped the gun into the waistband of his pants and looked over at us. She's right, though. You guys all set? I walked back to the counter and pulled the Soviet painting off the wall, making sure to keep eye contact directly with it. I think I'll bring this along, I said, as I pulled off the frame and rolled up the manageable tube. It has a comes-in-handy feel to it. I slipped the tube into the pack Butch had prepared for me. A quick glance inside showed a couple of sandwiches, a few religious relics, a set of brass knuckles, handheld crossbow, and a big bag of weed. I pulled out the weed, not complaining, but is this really necessary? We may need to bribe our way through at some point, Butch explained. I replaced it and slid the backpack back on. I'll take your word for it. The purple door at the back of the shop opened, and Jack popped his head out. He reached out a gnarled, clawed hand and pumped it up and down a few times. Plunger's under the sink, Jack, Butch told him. Probably be gone by the time you get out. You all good in here for the next couple of days? Jack threw him a thumbs up and disappeared back into the bathroom. I tried not to let my nervous eagerness show as Butch swept open the blue door to Purgatory. A vast desert wasteland greeted us. After what my shoulder demon had told me, I didn't hesitate for a moment before passing over the threshold. We walked out onto the alkali sand, kicking up soft, acrid clouds as our feet hit windswept dunes. Our surroundings seemed to be a large, dry lake bed, completely flat and devoid of life for miles in any direction. Small dust devils sent spirals into the sky, blurring the distant mountains blocking the horizon. Towards the center of the desert, a twinkle of bright, colorful lights thrummed along with the slow, distant beat of joyous hymn. It's going to take a few hours to walk there, I complained. Didn't the fairy mention something about a subway? Just wait, it'll find us. That raised a few further questions, but I got distracted by the sound of the distant hymns dropping the beat. I began wondering exactly what kind of heavenly song would make me want to start twerking when the ground began to shake violently below me. I fell on my ass alongside X-Mac and Babs. Butch managed to keep his feet and raised up a hand as if hailing a cab. Suddenly, a gigantic beast erupted from the sand and slid to a stop before us. Its huge cylindrical body ended in a huge gaping maw lined with 3-foot-long teeth that dripped saliva. Butch walked up to the creature's mouth, grabbed a hold of its tooth, and hauled himself into the mouth. He looked back at us. "You guys coming or what?" The rest of us scrambled to our feet. I tried desperately to swallow the knot in my throat as I gripped the vibrating animal's incisor and swung myself onto its tongue. When we were all safely inside the mouth and it closed around us, I felt the huge worm begin to burrow under the ground again. Babs started up a flashlight, illuminating the small portion of the orifice we occupied. The worm's tongue undulated unpleasantly under my feet, keeping me perpetually attempting to keep my balance. "I've got no strings to hold me down, to make me fret, to make me frown. I had strings, but now I'm free. There are no strings on me." I thought I was singing under my breath, but X-Mac turned to Butch to ask, "Is he always like this?" "For as long as I've known him, yeah." "Hey, if you guys don't think Pinocchio jokes are appropriate while in the mouth of a giant sandworm, I just feel sorry for you," I told him, perfunctory. "Death worm," X-Mac said. "Huh? We're in a Mongolian death worm. It's a similar but legally distinct creature." "I'm pretty sure Purgatory is outside the jurisdiction of most copyright laws." "I wouldn't be so sure if I were you," X-Mac warned. "All the major studios have branch offices out here." I shook my head. Spoil sport. "So how long are we going to have to ride inside Butch's mom?" That got a laugh out of Babs, which also served to get Butch's murderous look onto her and off of me. As it turned out, the answer to my question was about 5 more seconds away. I felt the tongue under me attempt to spell out the alphabet as it broke the surface and shuddered to a halt. My anxiety kicked into high gear as the maw began to open. I had been wrong. The distant music we had heard before was not a heavenly plea for redemption. Pounding electronic dance music poured in from the worm's mouth, and the undulating tongue unceremoniously pushed us out. I landed in a superhero pose on the hard-packed sand, my cloak swirling around me impressively. Babs gracefully stepped off the tongue and grinned down at me. "Having fun?" she asked. "I think I might still be drunk on virgin's blood," I told her, looking around as the others clambered out of the worm's mouth. I had been all wrong about Purgatory. I was expecting penitence, monotonous forms of torture, people praying for salvation, maybe. Instead, I saw large tents set up in rows, forming a semicircle several miles long. Humans and monsters in an eclectic array of costumes rode bicycles and scooters around the dusty roads. Grotesquely decorated buses blasted music as crowds hung out the windows, drinking and dancing. In the center of the desert area, surrounded by the tent circles, a large sculpture of a stick figure glowed softly in the scorching daylight. "Welcome to Purgatory," Butch murmured. "You're still here. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's spooky tale. If you'd like a little bit more spooky in your life, why not click on one of the videos that appears at the end of our story, or maybe head on over to one of our playlists where you can get your fill of spooky content. If you like your spooky a little more tactile, I've got a new book that's come out. If you'd like your own copy, there's a link below in the description where you can get your own copy of my spooky book. If you like what you see here on the channel and think you might like to support in a more monetized way, then why not come over to Patreon or become a member on YouTube? Speaking of, let's go ahead and thank our members now. Thanks to Civ Garstad, Unicorn Hollow, and Army Dude for being our spooky ghost contributors. Thanks to Janet, Lee Kendall, Saikat, Ronda J, Sue Casper, and Valinar for being our spooky skeleton contributors. Thanks to Oh Snap, Hi Stacy, Winter, Xaronan, Stephanie Carrington, Tyler Parker, Cinnamon Fox, Grim Reaper, and TomBoiTopUwU for being our Ghostly Reader tier contributors. And thanks to Scott Donahue for being our Ghostly Writer tier contributor. Thanks, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you. If you'd like to support the channel, then come on down to Patreon or become a member on YouTube. Spooky Skeleton tier contributors, that's our $5 tier, get their spooky 12 hours early at 8:30 a.m. as opposed to 8:30 p.m. My time, of course. And while Ghostly Reading is only a tier that's available on Patreon, you get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one on your doorstep in, hopefully, a timely manner. If you'd like a book, we have many on Amazon. I've got links below if you'd like to follow those. Should get you to my page so you can buy any one of my 8 books I believe we're up to now. I'm sure they'd look really nice on your shelf, and I'll sign them for you if you can find me out in the wild. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.